Hello, and welcome back to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show and owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy. Last episode, we were talking with Amy, and Amy's still here. This is a follow-up of our conversation. Great to still be talking with you, Amy. If you want to know more about Amy overall, and our conversation about sleep that we had last week, check out that episode. It's the one right before this. For today, we were just talking about sleep. Let's talk about your movement practice. I think you started off as a yoga teacher, and now you've sort of moved beyond that particular umbrella. So tell me about your philosophy and how that's evolved over the years.
I think really my movement practice started way beyond that with dance and improvisational movement and being really comfortable with that idea of exploring movement, especially with the improvisational piece of it. And I've always loved anatomy as well. So it's like where I am now is I love it and kind of bringing all of this together. So I did start with a yoga teacher background where I really quickly after getting certified kind of shifted into yoga therapy and studied with someone out in Canada who really focused on the kind of like how is the body built to move and then related it into yoga postures and yoga in and of itself. And I was really drawn to the anatomical piece and the movement exploration. And so those classes we were saying before, like didn't really look a lot like yoga on the outside. So a lot of the movement was like a much more like less is more approach to movement, which really started to build in that deeper body awareness. And then I kind of shifted from there over the years to bringing in a somatic exploration and lens. And the focus of the somatic, the clinical somatic certification that I received was Thomas Hanna's approach, which um, is sort of, I don't know if it's fair to say came from Feldenkrais movement, but he studied with Moshe Feldenkrais and then kind of
Mm.
created from there uh, some differences in the work. So I was kind of bringing in that movement modality and still kind of linking the two. Sometimes linking this more like movement exploration in the body, also interweaving in functional movement, and then showing that how that could shift and turn into a yoga posture. And then more and more over the years, really, the movement classes are much more focused on just exploring and not. So I guess one big main difference I would say it's not about like get into this posture and then move into this posture and then do this posture. It's really looking at this movement. It's not a formal sequence or anything, but it's kind of like instead of like if I were to turn my head to the right and turn my head to the left and be like, all right, I'm going to just do these head neck movements. Or I could actually tune into what is it like to start to feel things shift as I turn and let my head move over to look toward a shoulder. And then noticing like, oh yeah, what does it actually sense and like feel like in the neck? And then if I slowly let my head go to the other side, kind of enjoying the exploration of the transition from point A to point B instead of just boom, I'm getting here and I'm going to do 10 repetitions of something, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
really trying to get into what is the actual sensation of the movement? What does that feel like? And what is it like to pause? What happens in my breath if I go to a certain point? But then if I really crank it, because I think, well, my neck can go bigger than that, right? I want
Mm-hmm.
a bigger, more powerful movement. What actually happens when I force a movement compared to when I let a movement just unfold in a way that my body is ready for? And so the classes really have an opportunity to explore in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and definitely weaving in some of that awareness I kind of mentioned, like what happens with the breath when we do a certain thing, right? And like noticing how is this breath a part of everything we do. And I start all my classes with a, hey, what's going on for you today?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you like to focus? And so it's a chance, I think, one for community building where there's like a connection with people in the room and also virtually. So some of my classes are virtual only. It's like a carryover from when that was the only option, and people liked it and they joined from places because they couldn't join from somewhere else. I have somebody from Georgia in class, Connecticut in class, so it's kind of nice
Mm-hmm.
to know that they can join from afar. And then I have been told by a number of people who've taken classes with me that are hybrid that they're like, I don't know how you do it, but you make everybody feel like they're right there with you, whether they're at home or in person. And it's like seamless and it's not annoying. So there is that, just to like say, like it's possible to kind of be even in a class where there's some people here in person that I'm with and some people at home, and like everybody can feel that they are like equally a part of the exploration. Um, and Yeah, I improvise the classes.
Hmm.
So I don't come in with a set plan of this is what we're going to do. I kind of hear where people are at and what they're curious about. And then I kind of use that word weaving sometimes, but it really is what it feels like, kind of
Hmm.
weaving in the different places that people are curious about and different things they have going on in their body. And then create the class as we go.
And do you tend to have a structure that you're plugging those improvisations into, or is it even more open ended than that?
I would say maybe sometimes it's really,
Hmm.
really more open-ended, but oftentimes in my space, like in my mindset of like what I want to bring to class is, okay, I would love for people to move three-dimensionally and to really get a sense of, oh, what is rotational movement? What is like movement in the side bending area? What is it like to kind of arch and curl through the spine? So I'm really trying to think of helping people move in that three-dimensional way.
Hmm.
And, so I usually try to bring in that each class as well.
Okay.
And I
So
usually try
that's a recurring theme for
that would
each of them.
be a recurring
Okay.
theme, just because I feel like we tend to kinda live in a sagittal plane of, like, sit, stand, walk, go up and down stairs, very much like that, and we
We
really
have
need
fronts and backs, and
we are
that's
front and
it,
back.
right?
Yeah,
We're only two dimensional.
and we're mostly fronts, really, if we think of, like, forward focused and all of that, and so even when people lie down on the ground, it's like, oh, there's your back. Like, feel your back on the floor, move it around
Mm,
a bit, and like let yourself actually have that sensory information. And sometimes I'll have people have their back against the wall so that they can actually feel the back of their pelvis, the back of their head or shoulders or whatever when they're upright vertical plane. Um, and so with the somatic movement, a lot of the exploration is giving the brain a chance to explore movement in a way that is not the rote memorized way of moving,
mhm,
so that the brain then pays more attention. And then there's new movement patterns that can be introduced. And I bring in a lot of engage and release kind of explorations, so that for a lot of holding, like muscular holding, that might just kind of, oh, like whether it's use patterns or it's from an injury, compensation pattern or whatever, kind of working with some areas that might tend to hold tension and actually have people do movement explorations where they're engaging that area and then practicing releasing it and then
mhm,
noticing what are the different sensations of that, and kind of this idea of like neuromuscular re-education, bringing
mhm,
in new ways to do something and making it novel and new on purpose.
mhm.
Yeah.
This is all great stuff. It's I've always I feel like our as I think I said in the last episode, I love how our we come at things from different backgrounds
Mhm.
and approaches, but I've always found a common thread in how we think and break things down. I
Yeah.
tend to want to keep approaching things a little bit differently. That we're not set programs.
Yeah.
One of the things I movement practice I've been working on is I've been doing karate for the past almost 3 years
Mhm.
now. Before that, I was doing aikido. Before that, dance. But
Yeah.
right now, it's karate, and karate is, among other things, known for the kata, which is the form.
Mhm.
And you have your forms you do. In our school, when a lot of people think about a kata or a form, they have that like everyone lined up doing exactly the same thing in the exact precise way. In our school, like you got to learn the kata and do the right moves, but once you've got the basics, once you've been able to like do a correct back stance, the
Mhm.
timing, where the accent is, where you hold, where you pause and explore something a little bit differently is not only
Mm.
encouraged but required for advancement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So almost immediately it's not something that I can practice with somebody else beyond saying, "Hey, let me try to do it your way," as a way to explore it. But each person
Mhm.
is on their own path for their kata.
Hmm.
So I think you used to have a yoga, if I'm remembering, your yoga classes used to be multiple, and I've never actually observed them, but I've heard you describe it as multiple. You'd have up to like 6 people, maybe doing different yoga routines in the same room, and you'd be going around kind of
Yeah.
adjusting from there. Was the image I have? I don't know if that's
Yeah.
accurate.
I think when I was doing that, it was almost a little more like a small group private session almost where, yeah,
Mhm,
people could like have that. But I think in my classes, I really encourage people to don't like, I'm going to offer you things to try. Doesn't mean you have to do them, right? But really giving people the permission to notice, how is this thing I'm offering for you to do? How is it actually landing in your body? How is it actually feeling? And then I'm oftentimes just, I mean, if I see somebody that looks like, oh, what I'm offering isn't landing necessarily in a way that seems like the most helpful, I won't even necessarily like, sometimes I will suggest something specifically to one person, but sometimes I'll just generally and broadly like put it out there for everyone as a reminder, like, hey, or you could try it this way, scale it back this way, or maybe expand it this way, to kind of just open up the possibilities of where people can explore. And then I always usually really like to bring in a little bit of like, take the next 10 breaths to move on your own. And
mhm,
some people, they've grown, I think, to love it. But at first, I think it could be daunting because you're like, well, I'm here because I want you to tell me what to do. But really, what I'm trying to do is, and I'll say it is, because ideally tomorrow you're going to do something like, oh, I'm really noticing like my shoulders are sore or my back or whatever. I'm going to take the next 10 breaths and I'm going to do something that feels good in my body. So
mhm,
I'd like an example of trying to build in these ways that you take what we do in class. I mean, I want people to come to class, don't get me wrong, but
mhm,
I want them to take little snippets of it and do it throughout their day so that really they don't need to come to class because they just feel better in their body and they know
mhm.
how to do it for themselves. Um, but I love when they keep coming to class.
Well, I want to talk about that, the micro breaks and the bridges, as we sort of were talking about in the last episode,
Yeah.
in a little bit. But I wanted to. There's something that I've been exploring in my movement, and
Mhm.
again, sort of taking the martial arts. I have a criticism of a lot of movement practices,
Yeah.
especially when it's sort of like, which is not what you're doing, but when people are like, oh, just sort of explore your body and do free form work, which is
Mhm.
a great starting place.
Yeah.
But when people sort of just explore without any sort of cueing, they
Mhm.
tend to follow the patterns that they've always followed.
Exactly.
And additionally, if someone really likes opening up their shoulder
Mhm.
and stretching, and they're like, oh well, I keep doing that, so I'm going to keep doing that, like, this is, I don't, the amount of range I'm showing here, and I could crank my shoulder more, I don't
Yeah.
see much reason to put my arm back here
Or
reaching
yeah.
behind me. In fact, I see a lot of reason for me not to train doing that, so I don't reach into the back seat while I'm driving and tear my
Mhm.
rotator cuff trying to lift up a bag.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
So there's a safety and like nervous system conditioning of like,
Mhm.
these are good places to be and good positions to be in, not to have too
Yeah.
much judgment of good and bad. But if it's too open ended, then you might be setting people up for injury. So one of the reasons I like martial art is, if it's not a safe martial position, it's probably not a
Mhm.
safe position in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, but
Yeah. And to
I
speak
guess.
to that, yeah, is I will oftentimes, so I think of things as incremental
Mhm,
explorations. And so usually before doing a big movement of reaching the arms up and down like this, I'll start with roll your arm in, roll your arm out, and we'll spend some time doing internal, external movement. And then I'll be like, raise a shoulder up, release that, kind of
mm,
pull the shoulder down, release that. What is it like to bring the arm up with the elbow bent
mhm,
compared to the arm with the arm lengthened? Um, and usually every time in class, shoulders is something people bring up as they're curious about or they have something going on. And so right from the beginning, there's a notice how anything I offer feels for you. And I also talk a lot about how I'll just kind of show for those who might be watching, right? Like I I could raise my arm, but if in order to raise my arm, I have to arch my back and flare my ribs to raise my arm. Like that's really different than exploring what is it like to just raise my arm without everything else getting involved. And
mhm,
does it feel like to do it this way? What does it feel like to first start just moving the shoulder girdle complex and getting a sense of like building
Mhm.
incremental movement and building load. And so really what I'm hoping with that is because they get these like building blocks and they're also building hopefully that idea of like, oh, this is, oh, I can feel my shoulder blade moves when I roll my arm bone out, and oh, my collarbone, and I kind of have people touch here and feel where their collarbone meets their sternum, and that when they move their
Mm.
arm, oh, there's a little joint there. You
Mhm.
feel like that joint moves a little bit. So I'm really trying to get people to be way more aware of what they're doing so that if they do try to do that thing back here where they're like trying to pick the bag up behind them, like that they will have like what you're saying is like, oh yeah, that doesn't feel good. That feels like a long lever with something heavy at the end that I'm straining to try to do with a
Mm.
very intricate part of the body, you know? I don't know if
So,
that
but
kind of speaks
yeah,
to what
so
you're
you
saying.
you're bringing awareness. You're not just saying sort of
Move however you want.
you move however you want. You're bringing in, but you're not saying move this way either. What you're doing
Right.
is you're bringing awareness at every step of the way,
Yeah.
and trusting the body, the nervous system, to actually know what's safe and what's right. Because if you're checking
Mhm.
in and not just following a dogmatic rule of Irvin says don't reach into the back seat, then there might be a way that's a good idea to reach into the back seat or is safe,
Right.
and that might not be that you're encouraging real embodiment in it and building
Yeah.
the tools versus just saying these are no's or these are yeses,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Um,
And going back to this idea of three-dimensional movement, right? It's like, well, if I need to get something that's behind me, if I just do it this way, or if I just do it this way, that's really different than for the people listening audio. I just turned my neck and head trying to like force to be able to see behind me, or I reached with just my arm and I'm like straining at my shoulder girdle to reach behind me. But if I use my whole entire torso and actually rotate and let
yes,
my pelvis move and then let my neck and head and then do something, that's really different if it's a whole body exploration.
yeah, which maybe not the best idea to be doing any of those while driving,
Not while you're
but
driving. No.
but if you're
Use a
going to reach
different
into the back
example.
seat while you're not driving, then there's getting your hips under you and having that awareness is,
Exactly.
and having it not be an isolated body experience. I love
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So we talked about bridges in the last episode,
Yeah.
and we talked about, and I tend to think of as micro movements or micro breaks. One of my favorite things to do for people is be like, well, um, your shoulder hurts. Shoulders seem to be the,
The
maybe
thing.
because we're
I
looking at
know.
each other's shoulders on the video,
Yeah.
but shoulders seem to be the example of the day. But I tell someone, well, if your shoulder and neck hurts, and you're having some pain there, let's figure out a way to build into your schedule 4 times a day for you to take seconds to bring your shoulders up, bring them down,
Yeah.
reach the other way, or do some shoulder circles. And I come up with a very simple routine for someone that they can
Yeah.
do in 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And then be like, if you remember it, by the time you've remembered it and come up with an excuse not to do it, you could have already completed it.
Yeah.
So let's figure out times that you can remember it, and then that
Yeah.
you feel okay with. Maybe one person's completely fine doing that while waiting in the grocery line, and someone else is not.
Mhm. Yeah.
um, but
Totally.
so it seems like what you've talked about, both in the relaxation, learning to habituate, sort of bridging a relaxation throughout the day, and
Mhm.
micro movement, is similar to the micro movements. How do you habituate um, breaking up either your inactivity of sitting at the
Yeah.
computer
Mhm.
with some activity, or how do
Yeah.
you break up your activity of being hyper alert with some relaxation? It's a similar thing.
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean, I beyond me being like, yes, I love micro movements and micro breaks, and that we compartmentalize, like, okay, I'm gonna sleep tonight, I'm gonna rest when I'm
Mhm.
done making dinner, I'm going
Yep.
to exercise when I get home, I'm gonna go to the gym for an hour when I get home. And that's this
Mhm.
compartmentalizing that seems to me, beyond the fact that you're putting a lot of pressure on that gym visit, and if your
Mhm.
car breaks down, then now you've done zero exercise today. Also, you've put a lot of pressure on that gym visit, so you're more likely to injure yourself.
Yeah. I love micro movements, and I will say that I get that not very many people love the idea of them because it doesn't feel like you're doing enough. Because I think we've been, like, hardwired, trained to be like, "It's gotta hurt to be good," and, like, like, force, 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 and so I really feel like what you're doing and what I'm doing is a lot of, like, providing another option, right? And it does work for some people. And I think when people actually have a chance to try it, they're like, oh, that actually feels really good. And I've had a number of people be like, it doesn't seem like we did very much, but like I feel so much better. And that whole thing. So I think there's a little layer of kind of getting people on board a little bit to try it. And then it's like, how do you do that in a way where it lands for someone? So whether it's in a group class or an individual session, um, I will be really deeply listening to what feels important to this person so that I can kind of speak their language so that right from the get go or throughout the whole entire time I'm with somebody, I'm not just trying to get them to do something different. If they are like a power through, right, I'm going to try to be like, yeah, and try it like this for a little bit, let's see. So yeah, I think it gets really interesting. Like, how do you bring in, because there's just so much good amazingness in with learning how to scale things back a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it can be hard for the mind and the emotions to be able to meet that because there's so many layers involved in how we live in our bodies. Yeah.
If some is good and more is better, which then why would we ever just do some?
Yeah, exactly. There's a a sticker that a person from class gave me because she's like, "This is what you do." And the sticker she got from a therapist, the quote she got from a therapist, but she made the sticker, and it said, "Do less with more intention." And I just love
Mm.
it because it's just like, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. Doing a little bit less, but we're like really building that intention and awareness piece. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more things I would love to talk with you about, but I think this is a great, a great place to wrap up this particular episode.
Yes.
Thank you again for being on.
Thank you.
I always enjoy our conversations. I don't know why we don't have more of them. Um, you've been listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg. I've been talking with Amy LePage about movement and somatics and safe movement and a lot of other things. Next episode, we'll be talking with Amy again, and we'll be talking about parenting and co-regulation and stress response and such. So I'm looking forward to that conversation as well. You've been listening to Resilience Radio. The music is brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. You can check out the show notes for full credits on that. And until next time, take care.